Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Deveraj, President of Melbourne Camera Club. And on behalf of the board and our members, I would like to welcome all of you who are able to join us for our inaugural Facebook Live event for Open House Melbourne 2020. Before we begin proceedings for today, I would like to acknowledge the Yalukut Weelam clan of the Bun Wurrung people, on whose land the Melbourne Camera Club stands today. We pay respects to their elders, both past and present. I would like to acknowledge the City of Port Phillip for their grant that has made the Shot in the City of Port Phillip exhibition a reality for both the photographic and local community here at Port Phillip. Stay on and you'll be able to view the exhibition at the end of today's session. As some of you may know, this is our third event with Open House Melbourne, and we have an interesting program for you. So what's in store for you today? Just a reminder, you will also have an opportunity to ask questions on today's session via chat or the comments function on Facebook. One of the team, MCC team, will be assisting to collate those questions, and we will answer them at the end of the session when we have a Q&A time. We will start off with a short video about the history of the building, followed by a presentation by two of our members, Peter Walton and Jane Barnes, on an adventure that they had to go through to get an image of Jackson Street a la Rainbow Street in St. Kilda. It's a very interesting story, so stay on and listen to that session. We will then go into a Q&A, and we will finish off with a presentation of Shot in Port Phillip exhibition. Just a reminder, please do check out our website at melbournecameraclub.org.au, and we will also be, we will also be celebrating our 130th year anniversary next year. So keep checking back onto our website. So without further ado, here is a historical video of our
The Freemasons Hall, on the corner of Dorcas and Farrar Street, South Melbourne, or Emerald Hill, as it was originally named, has been the home of the Melbourne Camera Club since the club purchased the building in the late 1970s. The building came into being when, in 1876, the members of the Yarra Yarra Lodge of Freemasons purchased the land on which was to be erected a Freemasons Hall. Emerald Hill architects, Adamson and McKean, were entrusted with the work of preparing plans. The builder was Mr. Leonard Hafner, and the cost of the building, when complete, was expected to be £2,500. As it turned out, it was probably less than that, at about £2,000. The Age, on the 10th of June 1876, reported that the front and side elevation is of a most appropriate character, being of the Corinthian order of architecture. The main entrance is from Dorcas Street and is of a most commanding style. Over the doorway will be placed the coat of arms. Mystery has surrounded this amazing coat of arms. Whose coat of arms were they? Well, it turns out they are of District Grand Lodge of Victoria, as 1876 was before the Grand Lodge of Victoria was united. The Latin words Audi, Vide, Tace, inscribed below, translates as hear, see, be silent. Moving inside the building, the supper room, committee rooms, anteroom and offices are entered via the main door. The supper room, now used as a photographic studio, could seat about 100 guests. Other rooms are used as a darkroom, kitchen and storage. It took only a few years for Yarra Yarra Lodge to lose the building due to financial difficulties. However, they reacquired it again in 1910. Only to stop meeting there again by 1925. From then, the building was occupied variously by church groups, the Tri-Boys Society and others, until Joseph Taylor took over the building to run his automotive business from 1927 to 1966, specialising in Dijon, Bouton and Talbot cars. After his death in 1966, the building gradually fell into disrepair until it was forcibly acquired by the council and subsequently sold to the Melbourne Camera Club in 1979.
We first looked at this building and rejected it, but came back to it later. The council had changed their requirements. It was in a very poor state, and we had our first meeting in the club rooms downstairs on a dirt floor. The contract for the major restoration was $100,000 plus a lot of work by club members. In fact, I think it affected our photography for at least the next 10 years.
The Melbourne Camera Club has a history of continuous activity since it was founded in 1891, making it one of the oldest photographic clubs in Australia. The club was the inspiration of Ludovico Hart, the instructor in photography at the Working Men's College. The club provided a meeting place where students and graduates of the college could pursue the art and practice of photography, and, in admitting women, was in advance of its time. The lodge room is reached via the Victorian hand-carved staircase, which, with a prominent newel post, ascends and twists to the upper floor without the occurrence of intermediate newels. Because indoor gatherings were prohibited during the influenza epidemic of 1919, the club was obliged to continue its activities with outdoor meetings and excursions. As the college did not reopen after the epidemic, the Working Men's College Photographic Club changed its name to the Melbourne Camera Club and commenced operations at the YMCA building in the second half of 1919. This was the first of 13 moves in the next 60 years. The lodge room is now used as a gallery and meeting room. Its impressive covered ceiling with pilasters, with richly foliated caps and panels inlaid with marble, is largely intact. The club survived the depression of the 1930s, but with a reduced membership and in a precarious financial position. Yet enthusiasm remained high and much work of international standard was produced. A permanent collection of prints and slides was started in 1948, and the club now has a substantial collection of prints and photographic memorabilia.
The Melbourne Camera Club's been very fortunate in having an extensive archive collection, mostly relating to the photographers from the club, but we also have a collection from significant Australian photographers like Max Dupain, Harold Casino, Athol Smith, and even some photos of international significance, such as some from Lord Snowden and the very famous photograph of Winston Churchill by Karsh.
Disappointments, the Melbourne Camera Club secured the magnificent but dilapidated Freemasons Hall. After considerable work by club members, the fully restored, prestigious amateur photographic club rooms were opened in 1981 by the Premier of Victoria, Sir Rupert Hamer. Today, the club is still thriving, offering many special interest groups, public exhibitions, competitions and weekly meetings to its more than 250 members.
Since 1876, this building has been successfully repurposed and continues to attract interest and engage with the local community. Fortunately, the Melbourne Camera Club owns this beautiful historic building that has stood the test of time. It's unusual for a camera club to own its own premises. However, I believe this paves the way for the future of this building and for many generations to come.
My pleasure now to introduce Peter Walton and Jane Barnes, who are members of Melbourne Camera Club, and they're going to tell us a little bit about one of their images that's in the exhibition shot in Port Phillip. So welcome, Peter and Jane. And why don't we kick off by getting to know who you are. So Peter, we'll start off with yourself first. Perhaps if you'd like to kind of tell us your journey and how you came to know about the Melbourne Camera Club. When did you come to Melbourne Camera Club? Your journey in photography, and if you did have a full-time career before you got into photography, or you were a photographer from the very start of your career, your working career. Perhaps if you'd like to tell us a little bit about that. I do understand that you were president at one point in time at the Melbourne Camera Club. So that's great that you were a president. And please tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Okay, well, photography for me is something that I've had in my DNA ever since I was a teenager. My dad gave me a camera, a little box camera, and I got fascinated by the whole process. But I went on to get a job early in the piece in a camera club, in a camera shop in Gippsland, Warragul. And I got to know all the locals. In fact, I became a member and then president of the Warragul Camera Club way back. And in 1968, that was a monumental year. That's the year that NASA put a man on the moon. And it was the same year that I was invited to join one of the big photographic wholesalers in Melbourne, the Minolta camera people. So I moved to Melbourne and started to become a photographic sales rep for Minolta. In fact, they also handle Hasselblad, and I had the pleasure of showing the same Hasselblad camera that NASA had created for the moon mission, which is terrific, going around Melbourne saying, hey, check this out. So anyway, I was very much involved in the photographic trade, but I really wanted to be a photographer as such. And I studied advertising at RMIT because I wanted to get into the advertising photography circles. And then eventually I got together a portfolio of stuff and showed it around the ad agencies around Melbourne. And miraculously, I managed to break into that field and started a business as an advertising photographer. Well, as the digital revolution started to kick in, I could see that that profession was going to change. And so I slowly worked my way out of that and got more into stock photography, which means taking photographs for stock libraries and looking at or relying on the income that comes from them. The Getty images, for example, was one that I was involved in. And anyway, everything goes in cycles, and that started to wane. And I wanted to get back into a situation where I was interacting with other photographers, and that's where I thought, what about joining the Melbourne Camera Club? And I know amateurs are far more forthcoming with knowledge, whereas professionals used to be very precious about what they knew. So I joined the Melbourne Camera Club, and I learned a lot from other photographers, and that's been a real buzz. So where am I at the moment? Well, everything changes, and at present I'm working on recycling some of my favourite images with a view to having them published on an art gallery library in the US. I can't say much about that because it's only just begun, so I don't have much to report on it, but I'm having my fingers crossed and hope that it goes somewhere. So that's about where I'm at the moment, and it's been quite a long journey and a very interesting one. When people say, what do you do? And I say, I'm a photographer. And I say, it's a real job.
Very good. And what do you have a favorite genre, perhaps, Peter?
Well, it always was landscapes, and I guess it still is. It's where I get most satisfaction, creating what I like to think memorable landscape images. I'm very much influenced by the masters of landscape art, and some of the programs I use, in fact, allow you to emulate their styles, and I'm doing quite a bit of that. So, yeah, landscapes would be the answer to that question, but I do like photographing people too.
Excellent.
You do well.
Do I?
You do.
Oh, good.
There you go. There you go. That's good. That's great. That's great. And Jane, how about yourself? How did you come to know about Melbourne Camera Club? And what has been your journey in photography? Your early years, and what are you doing now?
My journey is very different from Peter's. my profession pre-photography was as an orthoptist, which is an assistant to the ophthalmologist, the eye specialist. So I used to see patients before the doctor and do a variety of different tests to investigate for glaucoma, diabetic checks, multiple other eye conditions. But one of the areas I did was also photograph the back of the eye. So I used to look inside people's eyes and photograph their retina, which was fascinating. But when I first started, that was all done on film, but then that also became digital. So I've always sort of dabbled in some photography, and I'd enrolled in a variety of different courses. I did courses at the CAE, the Council of Adult Education, and the local Living and Learning Centre. But the trouble with doing those sort of courses, there was no sort of continuity. You do the course and then it finished, and that was the end. So in 2007, I joined a local camera club, the Rosanna Camera Club. Saw an ad in the local paper and they were having an introductory course. So I enrolled in that, and it started my whole journey, and it was life-changing. I did the course, and, you know, paying for the course included membership to the club, which is similar to Melbourne Camera Club. You can do a course at the club and you've got membership, so you've got something ongoing. And that was the key for me, is being with like-minded people, being exposed to people with a whole variety of knowledge, opportunities. So that was the beginning of my major photography journey. So I got many opportunities doing that. I ended up being involved in sports photography for the A-League soccer. I had opportunities to do insurance photography for collectible items for a variety of people. But my connection with Melbourne Camera Club started in 2013, where I had gone on a trip to America with a Melbourne-based photographer, and Peter was one of the co-leaders on the trip. And there were also about 6 other members from Melbourne Camera Club that were on this trip. So when I returned, I thought, I really want to be part of another club and keep my connection with these people. And Melbourne Camera Club offered such a diversity of activities. They've got multiple special interest groups, and have meetings, you know, often 4 times a week, even more sometimes, depending on the activities at the time. So it opened up a whole new gamut of opportunities, people, and diversity of genres that I could be exposed to. So that's how I joined Melbourne.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent. And Peter, just one question for what's your Jane? Do you have a favorite genre?
I love the outdoors, so I suppose I'd also say landscape. But any opportunity that's come up, I've embraced. I might not know much about it, but I've quickly learned. So, you know, for instance, the soccer. When I did that, I knew nothing about soccer. But I had a couple of fantastic mentors that helped me and taught me, and I learnt the strategies of the game and learned how to predict play. So I knew nothing about it, but I loved it. So I don't like to sort of limit myself, but I suppose landscape and the outdoors would be the prime mover.
Excellent, excellent. And just coming back to yourself, Peter. How did you find, you know, working in professional photography and then coming to an amateur-based camera club? How did you find that whole experience?
Well, as I mentioned, the professional circles seem to be very secretive about their techniques, whereas the amateurs are very happy to talk about it. And so I found it refreshing to be able to come and talk to people who were willing to open up and say, well, this is how I do it. And I learned a lot from that, and still am. You know, photography is an ongoing learning process.
That's the thing about photography,
yeah.
Though. I mean, being a photographer, a lot of the time you're on your own. Being part of the club, it's very sociable, and there's all sorts of activities, and we have these fantastic we used to, not at the moment, these monthly walks, which opened up a whole avenue of opportunities there and meeting people. So the beauty of photography is you can do it on your own, or you can do it with a whole lot of other people, and you can do it any time of the day. So it's just the most wonderful genre to be involved in. It's refreshing, and it can be invigorating and stimulating and diverse. I couldn't think of anything better.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much for that introduction of yourselves. Perhaps now I'd hand the session over to yourself to talk a little bit about your image that is, I think, behind yourself.
It is.
Yes.
That is actually.
You'll get a better view at the end.
Yeah, and that is in the exhibition that we're going to show at the end of our session today. So I'll hand it over to yourselves.
Okay, so I'll just share the screen, but just bear with me. Okay, so hopefully you can see the screen there. Is that okay, Mark?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. So in late 2018, Melbourne Camera Club had an exhibition of images which were all taken in the city of Port Phillip, as Mark had explained. And the city of Port Phillip is where the club is located. So all members were encouraged to participate. A few months prior to the event, Peter and I received a call from a club member asking us for a favour. Sue was keen to get an aerial image of Jackson Street, St Kilda, for the exhibition. The reason being, in August of that year, a 35-metre section of Jackson Street had a makeover. It was painted the colours of the rainbow in support of the LGBTQIA community. Unfortunately, when Sue attempted to take an aerial, she had a major mishap with her drone. So this is where we were called in. Sue knew we had a drone and asked if we could help out, and we were more than happy to accept the challenge or the mission.
So we headed to Jackson Street, which runs off Fitzroy Street. It was a bright sunny day with lots of shadows and trees and other challenges. We did a bit of a recce and then started to prepare the drone. And as we were doing this, we were approached by a very official-looking gentleman asking us what we're up to. And then we were promptly told, this is a no-go zone for drones. So now what are we going to do? Plan B. Well, in this section of Jackson Street, now fondly known as Rainbow Street, there are 3 shops, the laundrette, the barber, and the massage parlour, and above them some apartments. Now, one of those apartments had an open window, and we thought, well, maybe we could get into that apartment, lean out the window, and get an aerial, sort of a semi-aerial view of the street. That should work. So how do we get access?
So next to the massage parlour was the entrance to the apartments, but there was a security lock on the door. Just around the corner in Fitzroy Street, we found the Easy Stay Studio Apartments. We thought maybe one of their apartments may overlook Jackson Street. We went in and spoke to the service desk manager and explained our challenge. Unfortunately, none of their apartments had a view of Jackson Street.
So what now? The apartments are above the 3 shops, and we thought, well, maybe we could ask one of the shop owners how we could get access. But which one would we approach? The laundrette, the barber, or the massage parlour? Well, Jane wasn't keen on me going into the massage parlour, so for various reasons we decided to try the barber shop. We entered the shop and explained what we were trying to do. And without any hesitation, the barber said, oh, you need to talk to Gary Gazza, the caretaker of the building. He kindly gave us Gazza's phone number, so I rang Gazza, and he said he'd be quite happy to let us in, but the trouble is he was in Rockhampton on holidays. And he said, but look, it's okay by me, just talk to one of the tenants. So now we had to work out how to find one of the tenants. So we wandered around a little longer and hoping to see someone who might have been a local tenant. And we saw this guy in the car park just across the road. Wondered if he might have been one of the tenants, but sadly no.
So this was not going according to plan. The mission was more challenging than what we originally thought. It was time for a strong coffee, some sustenance and a rethink. The weather was changing and the clouds were rolling in, but this was a positive, as if we did get into one of the apartments, there would be less contrast and no harsh shadows on the street. While having the coffee, we noticed a Telstra man working on the corner of Fitzroy and Jackson Street. We watched him for a while and then saw him disappear down Jackson Street. We quickly finished our coffee and wandered back to our point of reference. And lo and behold, there's the Telstra man at the entrance of the apartment block we wanted to enter. He was trying to get the combination right to enter the building. He was talking on his iPad, checking with head office what the entrance combination was. We thought, here's a chance. Next thing, he's opened the door and we were hot on his heels. We explained the mission at hand we had. He said, yeah, come in, I don't really care what you do. It's none of my business.
So we were in and confronted by this rickety old staircase. So we climbed up to the top of the staircase and there were 3 doors at the top. Jane was feeling somewhat apprehensive at this point. What might we be confronted with if we were lucky or unlucky enough to have somebody answer the door?
This was door number 1. It had a hollow peephole and we knew this room or apartment faced Jackson Street. So I hesitantly peered through the hole. In fact, it was a storage room filled with ladders, broken chairs and other things I'd rather not mention.
Door number 2, I rang the bell, but no answer. Door number 3, our last option. I rang this bell and waited. We heard footsteps. Jane's heart was racing. We were greeted by a friendly, smiling Paul who welcomed us in. We explained our photographic challenge and to our delight, he was more than happy for us to take images of Jackson Street from his living room window. So Paul kindly moved all his washing out of the way from the window, and while he was doing that, we chatted about life in St Kilda. We surveyed the view from his window and worked out our position and considered what camera lens would be the best to use.
As Peter was the tallest and had the longest arms, we decided he could hang out the window and get the best vantage point.
Well, this was the view that I got with my medium wide angle lens. It wasn't quite what we wanted, but I thought, well, maybe I'll try a panoramic image by joining the 3 shots together. It's far from the ideal way of doing it. Using a wide lens and pointing it down is not the way to do panoramas, but I thought at least I can give it a go. And this is the first of the 3 images. And here's the second one. And finally, the third one. And I was thinking to myself, I don't think this is going to work. We didn't want to overstay our welcome, so we thanked Paul profusely and left. We couldn't believe our good fortune in getting into the apartment above Jackson Street and being able to take at least some images. We were keen to get home and have a good look at them and do some processing.
So here's the first image again, which is unprocessed. Here's the same image, but now processed and with the corrugated iron roof above the shops cropped out. These are the 3 unprocessed images taken for the panorama. We weren't optimistic about how the software Photoshop would merge these together.
And this is what it did, which was pretty amazing actually. We were pleasantly surprised by how it handled it, and needless to say, we had a lot of work to do to improve it. And this is the final result. I spent a couple of hours working on this and thought I had it pretty well pixel perfect, but my very fussy co-producer wasn't completely happy, and she subsequently spent a few more hours finessing it. So this is the so-called aerial shot we delivered to Sue, hoping it would satisfy her criterion. To our delight, she was more than happy with the outcome and said, "This looks like a rainbow," which was certainly appropriate as it's affectionately known as Rainbow Street. So photography provides some interesting and unpredictable journeys, and we hope you've enjoyed the story behind this image.
So that's the end of our presentation about
Rainbow Street.
the Rainbow Street. So we had a fantastic time, and it will thank you to Sue for providing this amazing opportunity.
Very much, Peter and Jane, for that interesting journey and getting the image, the adventure on getting getting that image of Jackson Street a la Rainbow Street. So we will certainly have you on board to answer some questions from our audience.
Sure.
So we'll then go from there.
Okay.
Thank you very much once again.
Okay, our pleasure entirely. And thank you to Sue for getting us involved in this incredible adventure.
Right. So we'll open it up now for question time. If the team can read out the questions that they've been capturing right throughout the sessions, both on Facebook and also on Zoom, that would be great.
Okay, so we do have a question. One came in from James Walker, and this is a question for you, Peter. Can you discuss more about the software for landscape photography that you mentioned earlier, please?
I take it that's in reference to the software for creating an artistic effect from a landscape. Is that what that relates to?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's a very interesting suite of software put out by the Topaz Labs people, and they have probably about 3 or 4 versions of it which are dedicated to this creation of artistic effects. It's not actually a whole lot of presets where you just press a button and suddenly it becomes a painting. It's more a case of applying an effect and then adjusting sliders to get more or less of that effect, and then combining it with another, overlaying another effect, and so on. So it's an infinite variety of effects that you can get. And the 2 programs I use the most from Topaz would be Topaz Simplify and Topaz Impression. Simplify, the whole purpose of that is to reduce the amount of fine, I suppose you could say, fine detail or clutter within the image, because paintings usually don't have a whole lot of very fine, some blades of grass and stuff that make for a very busy picture. They're usually simplified. And so this program literally simplifies the image. And the impression program allows you to overlay effects that simulate various painters. For example, the Van Gogh look, or the there's a lady by the name of the name escaped me, but there are numerous. Georgia O'Keeffe, a famous American painter, and a whole lot of others where their styles have been virtually written into the program, and they can be overlaid over your photographs. So I find this a very fascinating and rewarding experience, creating these, I guess, painted versions of my favourite images. So Topaz Simplify and Topaz Impression. Yes.
We've got another question that's come in from Facebook. This one's from Jan, and she wants to know, did Paul, the owner of the apartment, get a copy of the image?
Sadly, no. Something that we walked away and thought, oh, damn it, we didn't
get his telephone.
We didn't get his phone number. And we thought it's going to be a bit of a business to con our way back into the building, so we just had to let that go.
Well, we did actually, we had some terrific flyers about the exhibition, so we did make a point of delivering some around the area, including at Paul's address. So he may or may not, but we don't personally actually know whether he did see it.
In a way, we didn't think of it at the time. I suppose we were kind of a little bit anxious to sort of get out of the place and get home and work on the pictures. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
Right. So we've got another question that's come in. So it's probably more aimed at Mark. Where do you go on your photo walks? Is it just around Melbourne, or do we head further afield?
So with the photo walks, we tend to have it either in Melbourne CBD or in and around Melbourne. So we've ventured out towards the Dandenongs, towards the Mornington Peninsula, and we've also been to the other side of Geelong, or close to Geelong, to Dog Rocks and the like. So we tend to make it accessible, and we try and alternate that between, you know, shooting within Melbourne CBD or the surrounding suburbs, and also, you know, far afield.
Great, thanks for that. And then there's also another question that's come in. Do many members still process film? And if so, well, we've seen the darkroom, but can it be rented by non-members?
At this point in time, it is only, the darkroom is only available to members, because it's, you know, fairly discounted, and it's fairly low cost to actually hire the darkroom. And so and it's only open to members at this stage. And there's no plans at the moment to open it up to non-members. But it doesn't take much to be a member of the club. The fees are only, you know, $185 for the whole year. So, you know, it becomes relatively cheap if you're wanting to use our facilities. We do have a darkroom, a studio, and also the gallery. So, you know, if you're into shooting in a studio environment, and also using processing film and printing in a darkroom, it becomes very economical to become a member, and then use it at a relatively higher rate. Roughly, we only charge $10 for 6 hours for using the darkroom. And all the information's on our website. So, you know, for those of you that are interested in analog photography, or even using the studio, check out our website, melbournecameraclub.org.au.
Great, thanks, Mark. We've got another question in regards to our exhibitions. Are our exhibitions open to the public?
Right, yes, all our exhibitions are open to the public, and they're always free of charge. We do not charge an entry fee to our exhibitions. And we do have public exhibitions where we had one this year, to celebrate International Women's Day, and we did have non-members also exhibiting in our exhibitions. So our exhibitions are always free and open to the public.
Great, thank you. Another question, just back on our photo walks. So we have a question about how do people join in that aren't members? How often courses run with Melbourne Camera Club? And what do we cover in them? So what courses are available, and how might people apply?
Right. So in terms of, there's two questions there regarding photo walks and the courses. Let me answer the first one regarding the courses. So when we're outside of COVID, over this isolation period, we will be commencing our courses once again. We tend to run a number of courses right throughout the year. The biggest courses we run are Introduction to Photography courses. We run 2 of them per year, and we run it at our club rooms with outings out into different areas of Melbourne to teach people photography out in the open. The Introduction to Photography courses are a 6-week course, which we run on typically a Tuesday evening, and it would run for about 2 to 3 hours with theory, and then we'll have practical sessions on the weekends, either at the club rooms or outside the club. So that's the Introduction of Photography course. We do run other courses right through the year. We'll have one-off courses to do with, lighting, or we do also run courses on Lightroom. So we tend to run them on the back of our introductory courses for anyone wanting to learn Lightroom. So typically that's an all-day hands-on course which we run in our club buildings. So that's something that we do right through. Now, in terms of the second part of that question regarding photo walks and how you can join in, the photo walks are actually open to not only members, but also to the public. So anyone can just keep track of us through our website. We do post photo walks there. We do also have a meetup group for photo walks. So you're everyone's more than welcome to join us in those photo walks. So, and typically they're once a month, typically the first Sunday of the month, unless we do get interrupted with Mother's Day or Father's Day. So it's either the first Sunday of the month or the second Sunday. So we will recommence that again after once the government allows us to actually meet up in groups. So I hope that answers that question, Sue.
Yeah, I think so. Another question's come in. So how is Melbourne Camera Club operating in the face of COVID at the moment?
Right. So I guess what we're trying to do is to keep the club alive. Most of you may not know, we've been running as a club for 129 years, and we've been running the club continuously. We did not stop for the pandemic, the Spanish pandemic, 100 years ago. We didn't stop for the world wars, the two world wars. And now in this time of COVID-19, we are still continuing, and what we're doing is that we're running virtual sessions on Zoom. They are only for members at this stage, but we do have from time to time sessions where it is open to the public. But typically, if there are anybody who's wanting to come to our Zoom sessions, if you can contact the club through our website, we're most certainly happy for you to join our Zoom sessions. It's and so just send us an email, and we'll send you details of how you can join our virtual meetings.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
Is there any other questions coming through?
We do have an interested caller. She's interested in nature. Is there a special interest group for nature?
Yes, we certainly do. It's a fairly new group, and we do have a group of people from within Melbourne Camera Club that are very much interested in nature photography. Information is available on our website, and if you are interested in joining us for some of those sessions, in fact, we've got one coming up this week. This week on an invited speaker speaking on nature. So there is certainly a special interest group for nature.
Fabulous, great. Thanks for those questions and answers, everyone. I think we can go on to the video.
Okay, right. I'm just looking through some of the other questions. Are there any other questions? There's been a lot of thank yous to Jane and Peter right through from Facebook. So thank you very much for that. And yes, all right. So just before we go along to our next part of our session today, I would really like to thank the Melbourne Camera Club team that has actually made this successful virtual event for Open House Melbourne. I certainly would like to thank the City of Port Phillip for their grant in making the Shot in Port Phillip exhibition a success for the community here at the City of Port Phillip. Also, I would really like to thank Open House Melbourne for their support in MCC participating in their program today. So just a reminder, please do check out our website at melbournecameraclub.org.au and keep a watch out for celebrations for our 130th year celebrations next year. So I will now sign off, and please continue to watch. We have a short presentation on the Shot in Port Phillip exhibition. Thank you, everybody.